Hey, hello, I'm Judas LM of the NPBA, and this is a battle replay analysis of a battle that took place earlier today between Disrespectable and AmusedForehead66. This battle was for the Jota division, which is the mid division of the NPBA. The NPBA is a National X league, a National X draft league, run by a great moderation team, and I'll leave a link to the description in Discord. I'll leave the link to their Discord in the description below. So yes, this battle was between Disrespectable, who represents the Feasting Spheels, and AmusedForehead66, who represents FC Bayern Mönchengladbach. Disrespectable went into the battle with 2-0. So this battle was about building on, extending their winning run and trying to get that third win on the board and progress themselves towards playoffs. Whereas for AmusedForehead66, it was for about getting their first win on the board and, trying to salvage some points, get back some points, and put themselves on a pathway to the playoffs. Looking at both teams, I'd say that Disrespectable has more offensive threats, namely in Tapakoko, Pasumi, and Niederking. But Forehead has the more composite team. They've got defensive Pokemon, they've got offensive Pokemon. I like that they brought Hitmonlee. It's a good Pokemon with the ability Unburden. And they tried to make use of that. Zapdos was used offensively, I like that. And Zapdos was the main offensive threat in this team, in this specific team, I feel. One change I would have made in Forehead's team is bringing Deoxys defense, as it had the ability to neutralize the Passimian and Nidoking, which did a lot of damage to their team. Especially defensive Deoxys defense would have eaten up hits from Nidoking, and even would have eaten up hits from Passimian, even though it's especially defensive. And this was the set that Disrespectable brought, a choice scarf set. So even a knockoff, they eat that well and they can recover back that damage. So yeah, I would have brought Deoxys defense if I was them. That's one change I would have made, and I could have brought that into Licky. But that's not to downplay Licky's ability as a cleric, and they also get stealth rocks. I like that they brought Shaman, because Shaman could bring leech seeds, add something different to the team. Got a good variety of moves. The Rabombi didn't come, which made sense because of Absol having magic bounce, so I understand that. They could also have brought Gyarados Mega as a setup. Gyarados Mega could have pressured this Disrespectable team. But all in all, I think both players brought a good six Pokemon each. Disrespectable could have potentially brought the Gourgeist, as this would have given them an immunity against Licky's normal attacks and Hitmonlee's fighting type attacks. But I understand why they didn't bring Gourgeist, as then they would have had as they probably would have had to substitute out Slowking, and consequently they would have had no counter to Entei, which was one of Forehead's main offensive threats. So now, looking at the lead, Disrespectable leads off with Simeon and AmusedForehead with Zapdos. So I'll just rewind that. Now, it makes sense, both of their leads make sense, because Disrespectable is running a choice card for Simeon, so they have the potential to take AmusedForehead off guard with the speed, and they might be able to take out a Pokemon in the first couple of turns. So it's worth a shot. AmusedForehead leads with a Zapdos, which is good because it covers Disrespectable defensive options in Skarmory and Slowking. And because they run an offensive Zapdos set, as you will soon see, they can pressure any Pokemon on Disrespectable's team. And that's what they do with the Hurricane. Now you might be thinking, why bring Hurricane? They're not running Rain, so there's a chance we'll miss. Well, in that case, why not just bring Heatwave? I believe it was for the Passimian, because Heatwave hits Heatwave could hit Skarmory. I mean, they'd use Discharge or Volt Switch Skarmory. But Heatwave hits Vikavolt, Galarian, Darmanitan, Gourgeist. So, Hurricane, I assume Hurricane's for the Plasmia. And it's neutral on a lot of their Pokemon. And it paid off because they did 97% to Nidoking. But fair play to Disrespectable in bringing a Black Sludge Nidoking, as this allowed them to keep Nidoking in the game and allowed them to clean up with Nidoking at the end of the game. So they bring in Tapu Koko. Makes sense. And Zapdos goes for the extra sensory. So AmusedForehead is really asserting their Zapdos in these first few turns. And I love that. I love this use of the Zapdos, and I'm sure it took Disrespectable by surprise. So they've revealed two of them moves, Hurricane, extra sensory for the Nidoking, and Hurricane for the Plasmia. So you can assume that they've got an electric attack move, which they revealed to be Volt Switch, and Roost. So Disrespectful goes for Calm Mind, which is an interesting set, and a Volt Switch into Licky. Disrespectful tries to get the substitute, but it doesn't work due to Durable. And once this is faded, they make the intelligent play of going into Skarmory. And I like this play because it's a simple play, and it's a defensive one. But it forces AmusedForehead into a situation where they need to make a switch. And Disrespectable is good at capitalizing off of these situations. They actually go into the Tapu Koko. The Tapu Koko play makes sense because Licky is likely to they're either likely to wish with Licky if they're like that cleric set, that whole healing set, or they're going to go into the Zapdos, and Tapu Koko has the ability to pressure Zapdos, which is their main offensive threat. And this is a recurring strategy from Disrespectful when trying to weaken a Zapdos or remove it. So AmusedForehead actually goes for the Dragon Tail, which is a cool tech. It doesn't work out in this situation, which is unfortunate for them, but it was a good attempt. And this is where Disrespectful and Mind Games begin, because they go back into the Skarmory, again a sensible play, in case they go for the Dragon Tail again, like in expecting something else, or just to block the Gyrable and to Rocky Helmet damage. And then they hit the Body Press, which hits, it hits hard. And then what's good is they weaken a Licky, then they know it needs to switch. It can't wish. It's unlikely to protect. So they need to make a switch. And they're likely to go into Zapdos, because Zapdos has static and it has an advantage over Skarmory. And that gives them the opportunity to bring in the Tapu Koko and again weaken or take out the Zapdos. So a very good strategy from Disrespectful and weakening Licky and then making a switch, which we'll see now. And instead of Zapdos, AmusedForehead goes into Entei, which is good because I feel they identified what Disrespectable was doing. And Entei made sense, and if they did clock onto that, then Entei made more sense instead of Stakataka, because it prevents Skarmory coming back in. So good play. And very good play from Disrespectable here, because again they've made some aggressive play, they made some brainy switches, but they know when to play defensively, and they bring the Slowking in here. And although this looks like a very basic play, it's a composed one. They're aware that their counter to Entei, their sole counter to Entei is Slowking, and they can't afford to let Nidoking take damage because it's 10%. But Simeon's one of their offensive threats, so they're not going to let that take damage. Absol Mega doesn't have great defensive stats, so they're not going to let that take damage. Slowking is the counter, so they bring that in. And obviously Skarmory can't take a hit from Entei, and Tapu Koko is weak. So it makes sense. And judging from the damage, Entei is choice banded, and also judging from the way that AmusedForehead uses Entei throughout the game, And I like that idea. Again, it has the potential to bust a hole in Disrespectable's team, which is what they need to do. So they bring the Shaman here. Yeah, which makes sense because Shaman's a grass type and Slowking's a water type. And here, Slowking uses Toxic. Sorry, I keep stopping. I just want to go through each play because these are some very good plays from both sides. And what seemed like a basic play in going Slowking on the Entei has now allowed Slowking to get a Toxic off on Shaman and afflict it with the poison ailment. And that's very good. And it shows how defense can be a form of offense. And I like that in Disrespectable's game. They're very fluid in their switching. And I think that anyone watching them should pay attention to that. Because there's more to come. Skarmory comes back in. And Shaman goes for the Leech which is very good. And why I think it was good that it brought Shaman. And here's where Zapdos comes in. You see? And they've been waiting for this all game to lure Zapdos in. And they've done it. And consequently they're able to weaken the Zapdos. Which is brilliant. And although Tapu Koko goes down, which is a bad thing, they've got offensive threats on their back in Passimian and Nidoking. And they're confident enough to know they can clean up with these late game. So it's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing, but at least they've weakened a Zapdos, which is AmusedForehead's main threat. But let me ask you this. What if Entei came in there instead of Zapdos? That would have forced Disrespectable in a situation where they would have had to have gone Slowking again. Shaman would have come in again. And it would have been healed of its poison ailment because of natural fuel. And it would have repeated this cycle again and would have put AmusedForehead at an advantage. So perhaps that's a play they could have made. That's an alternative play they could have made. But getting rid of the Zapdos is good for them. And Disrespectable's next play is good because they go Absol. Now the reason they go Absol rather than Passimian or Nidoking is because Nidoking can't outspeed a Maxi Zapdos, which is and it's highly likely that that's what the Zapdos set is. And they don't want Passimian to be paralyzed by static through making contact with the Zapdos, so that's why they bring in Absol. And Absol also means that Zapdos can't switch out because AmusedForehead doesn't want it to set up the Swords Dance. So they have to cut their losses and just get rid of Zapdos, and it evens up the game again. So even though Absol's paralyzed here, it puts Disrespectable, it gives the momentum back to Disrespectable. Now this is where I feel the tide of a battle turns somewhat. Because Hitmonlee comes in, and Hitmonlee has the potential to do damage to Disrespectable's team. A knockoff can do damage to Slowking. Fight Type move can do damage to Skarmory, Absol, Mega, and they're going to hit Passimian quite hard and Nidoking quite hard. And if they can pop the Unburden ability, then they've got the opportunity to break down Disrespectable's team. However, they go for Fake Out, and I understand why they went for Fake Out because it pops their normal gem, allows them, gives them Unburden. But I just feel that going for knockoff or close combat or something a fighting type move would have been better, and then maybe running a different item like Citrus Berry to pop that Unburden, because I just feel that in this matchup, Fake Out didn't do much other than popping the Unburden. And at this point, And at this point, Skarmory is just able to body press him when they didn't get out. So I feel that a different set could have done more. But they do the right thing and bring in Entei in after. However, two of their 3 offensive Pokemon have gone down. So I feel that this is where the momentum really shifted. And perhaps a different set could have helped me to break a hole in the Disrespectable's team. Slowking comes back in, and again, a simple play, but it's the right one, and it's an effective one, because they can't bring anything else in on the Entei. That's why I said it would have been nice to have seen Gorgust, but Slowking needed to come because it was the counter to the Entei, and they used that very well. So Shaman comes back in, and this time they opt to go for the side shot. And a good play in bringing Absol Mega in for the Leech Seed. I don't know if that was intentional or whether they just wanted to get the knockoff off. To weaken Shaman. But then the Skarmory comes back in again, another defensive and sensible play, but one that works well. And I really like what they do here in a minute. But they get the body press off. Then they roost. And now they go for the body press again to weaken Shaman. So Shaman's been weakened here, and it's unlikely they're going to click Leech Seed again, predicting someone to come in. And instead, they're likely to click, because of their situation, because they're on the back foot, they're likely to click Protect again. And this means the Disrespectable has the opportunity to bring in a Wall Breaker or Sweeper. And this is the similar tactic they used earlier on in the battle to bring Zapdos in, to weaken Zapdos and then eventually to kill it. Is they weaken a Pokemon that was in to the point where it would have to switch, or it would have to use a defensive move, and then they brought the Wall Breaker in. So a very good tactic, and they use the same tactic throughout the battle, but they're very subtle in its usage. So AmusedForehead wasn't able to pick up on it, and even when they were, because they were on the back foot, they couldn't afford to make aggressive plays. And as you see, look, the Protect and the Passimian comes in. Now a close combat from Passimian can potentially take out Shaman, or it's gonna weaken it to a very low point. They can't afford to get off to risk a Leech Seed or a Giga Drain. So they bring the Entei in, and our close combat's going to be a 2-hit on Entei. Fair play to AmusedForehead for understanding that for interpreting that the Passimian was Choice Scarf and going for the extreme speed, cutting and losses, taking what damage I could get to eventually take it out. That was very perceptive of them, and I like that. And Shaman comes back in. Again, they make the sensible play of the Skarmory. And now what I want you to focus on is how they get the Nidoking in. We've seen how they've weakened the Zapdos by weakening defensive options and then switching in the offensive threats when they're forced to go for a defensive move. And they do exactly the same to win the battle. The Leech Seed miss was unfortunate, but I feel the same thing would have happened regardless. Look, so now Shaman's been weakened. They've got the Leech Seed up, so they've got some passive recovery. So it's likely going for the Protector. But Disrespectable notices this and brings in an Nidoking. They're on top of the game, so it makes sense to do this. And they've got an insurance policy in, not the item, they've got an insurance policy in Passimian. Because if Nidoking goes down through a Giga Drain, if Shaman chooses to Giga Drain. If the Nidoking goes down from the Giga Drain, then Passimian comes in and that sweeps. So this is a calculated play, and I love the way they set these kind of plays up throughout the game, and they're very good at doing that. And everyone who's watching this should pay attention to that and try and not emulate that, but just take inspiration from it and be mindful of it, especially if you're going to play Disrespectable at some point in this season. So then Sludge Wave, Stack Attacker is going to get killed by Earth Power. And there's no way that Edgilick is going to take a Sludge Wave. And that means that the battle ends 5-0 to Disrespectable. But it was a close game. It was closer than it looked. The final score doesn't tell the full story, because AmusedForehead played well defensively, and they had an option. They had the opportunity to break a hole in Disrespectable's team with the Hitmonlee. Just their set didn't suit the situation, and potentially they could have used a different set. But I like what they tried to do. They played well defensively. But what turned the tide in Disrespectable's favor was their switching. They mixed defensive plays with aggressive plays. When they'd make an aggressive switch in, they'd follow it with a defensive one. They recognized that Slowking was their answer to Entei, so Entei wasn't able to get away with anything. They neutralized Hitmonlee very quickly. They mitigated Zapdos effectively by weakening the defensive threats, forcing it in, and weakening it with Zapdos, then finishing it with Absol. They didn't let it get away, and that was very good on Disrespectable's part. Their switching was what gave them this win. But credit to AmusedForehead, they played well defensively, and their Life Orb Zapdos would no doubt have taken Disrespectable by surprise. Look, they even say, hey, Life Orb Zapdos surprised me good. It was a very good tactic, and this was a very enjoyable battle to watch. Well played to both players. AmusedForehead, I'm sure you'll be back next week. I hope you get a win next week, because your record doesn't tell the full story. You're a very good batter. And Disrespectable, best of luck to you as well. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll leave a link to the NPBA and the Discord. And let me know in the comments if my audio has improved slightly, because I've tried to implement a noise suppression setting on OBS. So let me know if it's improved, if it's worse. And I'll adjust it accordingly. Thank you for watching.